Madam Chair.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everyone to our council meeting for Wednesday 21st of April 2021. I'd like to welcome the councillors, staff, press, members of the public and people watching at home. Just a reminder that this session is recorded today. First of all, I'd like to call for apologies, and I have an apology from the Mayor, who's absent on council business. I have an apology from Councillor Letham for lateness, and Councillor Wilson has given notice that he will leave for a short period of time. Are there any items of extraordinary business? No, thank you. Any declarations of interest that we should record? No, thank you. So our first item today is public forum, and we welcome Lindsay and Bev Baggery from Boundary Road to speak to us. So we've been handed some pieces of paper that hopefully everyone's had a quick look at, and I'll just get you to turn your microphone on, and you've got 5 minutes to speak to us, and then we'll ask some questions. No, other side, the light should go on. There you go.
I thought I might stand because it's easier if you can all hear me. Lindsay and Bev Baggery, Drumblade Farm. We have been farming at Hines for 52 years at 2017 Boundary Road, and Lindsay has lived in the district for 65 years. Have all the councillors seen our documentation? Well, I've written this before. You've now got some of it. We've applied for closure of the stock water race running through the middle of our property. ECAN made a ruling that ADC must close so many kilometres of stock water races each year. 2012, we closed our first water race. 13 properties were involved, and the other 2 water races were closed without communication. This was great. History of Moffat's Drain, it's all tabled, and it's too much there. You can read it in your leisure. Moffat's Drain from State Highway 1 is a private drain. This runs through the middle of our property and was part of our border dike irrigation system. We employed Bowden Environmental to apply for consent to divert the stock water at a cost of $4,400. And a quote from Mark Taylor, Aquatic Ecology, $4,000 to electric fish the drain. This has been put on hold. We went to the Domain Office to pick up water race closure documents and asked for a list of property owners that pay stock water rates. To date, we have had no information on this. I visited the 8 properties, this is Lindsay and I explained our intentions and left the closure forms. We returned to pick them up, awaiting the water survey that was supposed to be sent to all properties. Apparently this only went to the objectives. 6 out of the 8 want this closure to happen. This is 75% in favour. One reason for the closure is the environmental sustainability. And there's a letter tabled from our farm advisor, Nikki Watt, and also a map from the farm, our share milker, our daughter Jo Moore has done. Drumblade Farm request written permission from ADC to divert the stock water at Boundary Road. We believe that ADC has a problem. We have no stock water facilities on our farm. How does the raceman intend to get the water from Boundary Road to Ben Stock's property on Surveyors Road? Thank you for listening, and we're open for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take questions from the floor. Anyone got a question? Councillor Brahm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned just before it's a private drain. Who owns the drain?
We do. We dug it for our border dike irrigation on our land at our cost.
Lindsay, I'll just get you to turn your light on so that everyone can hear what you're saying. Thank you.
Environment Canterbury claim it to be theirs, but if it was theirs, there would have been plans and easements signed for this to happen. This all happened after the Resource Management Act, no, the Public Works Act was abolished. In our history of Moffat's Drain, it was taken to just under the railway line in State Highway 1, and then it just travelled in the contour of the land. And to make life easier, we simply channeled it to where we want it. And we claim it as our drain because our water-like irrigation system has probably 5 or 6 control gates through the farm. And years ago we had a consent to use that water, spring water, and we had a consent to divert it so that we could pump it for rotor-owners. But in the information that we sent, there was a paper there that had the flow readings for the last 10 years at Moffat's Drain at Boundary Road. And there was a period there, probably about from 2010 through to about 2015 when the drain was dry. So things look pretty good for us. And then the council diverted the water races into a neighbouring irrigation supply race. That was all right for us because it wasn't in our place, but then it slowly dried up and Moffat's Drain started to run again. So we believe that the council then used Moffat's Drain as a dumping facility for their stock water. And it's...
So it's the spring fed race?
It used to be spring fed.
Yeah.
I met a South Canterbury guy from South Canterbury, Ecan fellow, measuring the water at Moffat's Drain about 10 days ago and told him of our problem. And he spoke to his superior in Timaru, and he called back and he said basically the District Council have a consent to take water from the Rangitata, and what they do with it is what their wish.
Okay.
So that the Environment Canterbury don't want to have anything to do with our problem, but said if you want a meeting to try and sort this out, then we can arrange it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Falloon.
Thank you. I find it a little bit complicated to deal with in 5 minutes like this, but by what you're saying, the Moffat's Drain for 5 years was dry.
Yes.
It has now got water flowing through it continuously because there has been a diversion of council stock water races into it.
Yes.
So where does the water flow beyond your place?
Well, at the moment, at the moment it goes to the next road down, which is Surveyors Road. At the moment, the water race is damp, but no water flowing, and that's probably halfway to the end of the stock water, or whatever you call it.
Now, my understanding is that you don't pay rates on this drain at all.
No.
So therefore you own the drain.
Yes, the irrigation race, yes.
Yes. So what is to stop you filling the damn thing in?
Basically nothing. But the regional council said it would be wise to leave a swale, because if there is surplus water that comes from above the wet area up around Councillor Wilson's area, then we can handle it. The drain is there, and it would be silly to fill it in and it's all fenced and everything is right. The problem is this drain runs through, right through the sort of, our farm is set in two halves. We got the back half with a pivot that we put effluent and fertiliser through. The other half, which has this drain going through it, we're unable to do that. Because of this drain, we would like to divert it, but we would soon like it closed off totally.
So basically what you're requesting is for the drain to remain, but the water going into it to be shut off and go back to where it used to go.
Well, into this, the diversion, which actually runs along Boundary Road, and then it goes down our tanker track and out the bottom of the farm. It's more convenient, nowhere near the centre pivots, but I would be upsetting all the other 6 people below us if we bloused out and settled for that, because they want to get rid of it.
I can understand that.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I guess why you've come to us today is because you're dissatisfied with the lack of progress on the application to close the race. Is that the question?
Correct.
Yes. We started this back in the end of last year with our letters and reports that we're supposed to have. The staff, the one survey wasn't filled out good enough, so we'll have to do it again. So after the period of 14 days or whatever it was for the information to go in, but we didn't get the papers. We didn't get any of the forms or stuff from the council. If we wanted, I simply went in there and picked it up and did it. And then the next survey, what they call a survey, related to wells and pumps, which was supposed to be posted out, but I only really talked to the people that wanted it closed. The other 2 objectors, I didn't worry about talking to them.
We'll go to Councillor Mackay, and then I might go to Mr McCann for a comment.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor. In that comment, or at a future date when we discuss it, can we please have the consent number for Ashburton District Council to drop water in this drain? I'd be very interested to view that consent. Thank you.
Thank you. Neil, do you just want to?
Yeah, through the Chair, we are working through this application. It is probably one of our most complex ones because it does involve the drain, Moffat's drain, and ECAN administer or look after it. So we are entering into discussions with them. We have to contact all the property owners and just verify what they've filled in the forms, because sometimes it's not that clear exactly if they do have an alternative water supply or not, and we need to just delve a little bit deeper into that. We also believe there's a property where there are some wetlands, which it has been identified that there are eels and there's life in those wetlands. So we have to go through the process. We are going through the process, and it'll end up either coming to council or there'll be a clear decision. But we'll follow the guidelines and policy, and we're about halfway through that at the moment.
Thank you for that. Thank you both for coming in. We appreciate it. Yes.
We did want to know just who the people that my neighbour Lawrence Thompson has 2 duck ponds down there on the races on the neighbour's place. On the council map, there is no water race there. That's for somebody to shift the water from one property through the boundary fence is what we're trying to do, or similar. We are diverting the stream. It's already cost me $4,000 odd to try and divert the stream. Our problem is that what we do is right close to the road, and ECAN and everybody can see what we're doing. All these other problems are between the two roads and nobody knows what's going on. So
Okay, thank you. Final question, Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor. Just trying to think my question. My question is, if Mr Baggery says that he does not pay drainage rates on this drain, yet Mr McCann says it's an ECAN administered, can we have that clarified, please? And when will this come back to council?
The ECAN don't administer the whole race, it's only a section of the race. So that particular race is stream fed, that's the Moffat's drain, and we've got a stockwater race above it, which feeds into it, and then it continues further down. So effectively it's working as a stockwater main, supplying further properties downstream. And we've got the person at the end who doesn't have an alternative water supply and doesn't want the closure. So we have to deal with the people and speak to them and get more information from those people who don't want it closed and follow the due process.
Thank you.
And in terms of timing, we are getting all the information now according to following the guidelines, and then depending on the outcome, it may come to council or there'll be a clear decision from the guidelines, but we'll keep you up to date through activity reports if it doesn't come to council for a decision.
Thank you. And so if it doesn't come to council, we'll come to activity briefing, so we will be updated. Thank you both for coming in. We appreciate your time.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. If you turn those lights off, that would be great. Wonderful. Thank you. So we will move on to confirmation of the minutes. And they are pages 3 to 7. So we will go through any amendments to page 3. Councillor Brahm.
Yes. The public forum, we had Chris Redmond and not Richard Sparrow, but Richard Wilson's, and he works for Sparrows.
Wonderful.
I can call him a Sparrow, but it's not right.
Thank you. We'll amend that. Page 4. Page 5. Oh, sorry, Councillor Rawlinson.
It's got that Lynette and I were here on Zoom. That was way back at Wanaka Show weekend. We were actually in the room for this one. Might have been a cut and paste.
Thank you. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Can I have a mover that the minutes of the 7th of April council meeting be taken as read and confirmed? Councillor Wilson moved. Councillor Cameron second. All those in favour say aye. Against, no, carried. Thank you. Oops, sorry. So we will go to our first report on page 8. Item number 5, sealing access ways. And we've got Mr Firth at the table, so I presume everyone has read the report. Are there any questions for Mr Firth? Councillor Wilson.
I've got one. Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor. Is there any way under safety, Brian, we can enforce people with dairy tracks that are carting gravel out onto the road? Houses, to me, are not so bad. It's when they get dairy tracks that continually cart stones out. Can we not say, under health and safety for other road users, you must seal your driveway?
As we found out from the legal response the first time round, when we tried to bring in the sealing of all access ways, we don't have the right to retrospectively tell people to seal. We have the right if they are a newer property and doing a different business than what they used to do, but if it's a established property, we don't have the right to change the current circumstance.
A supplementary, could we enforce them if not sealed, to actually improve their driveway so that the big stones are carried back and they just use top course. So, I mean, that's my gripe, is there's quite large stones are dragged out in these dairy gateways. To me, it not matter whether it's sealed or not, long as it is safe and they manage into their farm entry, it's safe for people to travel past.
I think the only real avenue that we've got there is to talk with them, discuss it with them, indicate our stance and why, and see if they would generously assist.
I've got a question from the Mayor, and he has asked, does the same contractor do both jobs, as in the contractor who does the roading or the sealing of the road also do the sealing of the driveway at the same time?
Generally, no. We've found that the sealing operation is a particular operation, and the construction of the access way doesn't generally have that type of machinery. So we've found that it's far easier to operate two separate contracts for the work.
And is that more cost effective as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not only the stones that's really a problem, but also the entranceway to the farms. You know, they start really taking the roading out. I think that is almost more a worse thing than just the stones. But could we make a bylaw or something like that? Is that a possibility? Because it is dangerous.
I'm not sure just what the process is under the bylaw, whether we could bring it in under the bylaw. Certainly under the district plan, we have various accessway requirements, and we could change it under that. But as you know, the district plan process of change is quite a long and laborious process. Under the bylaw, I'm uncertain as to whether we could do it or not. We could certainly look into that.
It is just, to me, a safety issue. It is.
Thank you. Councillor Lovett.
I was going to say I had a broken windscreen a few weeks ago from stones at a dairy farm. But I'm just, this is going to take years to get round the district when you reseal roads. Is it not possible within budgets to be able to do certain areas because, or certain roads to get a whole lot of these driveways done at all?
We're basically working two processes. When we do a rehabilitation, which is a rebuild of a particular road, we will do all access ways, or not all access ways, but major access ways under that circumstance. So in that situation, we go right to the property boundary. We will seal the access way, we'll tidy it up and construct it properly. When we are resurfacing, we don't have that option. So we tend to, on the resurfacing side of it, get agreement from the local people. We're finding mainly in the major traffic roads that we're getting reasonable compliance. It's only really on the much lower traffic roads that people seem to balk a wee bit and don't really need it.
Thank you. Any further questions, or would someone like to move the recommendation we have? Councillor Falone, I can't see your light because of that jug. There you go.
Sorry about that. I will move the recommendation. To me, it makes sense carrying on with the present situation. I know, talking to people who have had this done, they're more than happy with the results of what is being done. It's good for them. It's also good for the council, and the alternative is that we're not picking up the total cost of it. Perhaps the only minor disadvantage is that we do not have total control over when it's able to be done, but I support the recommendation as it stands.
Thank you. And seconded, Councillor Brown?
I say yes.
Yes. Any debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. Thank you, Brian. Next item is naming of road, Camrose Estate subdivision, and we've got Mr. Ian Hydes here, page 12. We've all read the report. Ian, do you have any comments to make? No, pretty self-explanatory. Any questions for Mr. Hydes? Councillor Brahm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ian, I noticed that there's both, well, there's some more coming in later, who only gave one name instead of three for each road. And then it said it might delay it. What would be the delay part?
Through the chair, effectively that is yourselves as councillors. If for some reason you don't agree with the recommendation or the proposed name, or that or for through our due diligence checks before it gets to you that we find that it's not appropriate, then that means that basically that they've got no fallback position, essentially. And so every time that this comes forward with an application like this, I make sure that the applicants are fully aware of that situation, that they may be delayed by it because it can affect their titles issuing.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Brahm?
If not, I will just move the motion as it stands.
Move the motion. And Councillor Rawlinson, second.
I'm happy to second it.
Lane, I'll just get you to turn your light off, please.
Happy to second it, but I had the same question, and are we allowing this to become a habit in the future where people, and I notice the next item also, they're only putting in one name option when we require three. So I tend to think we're allowing a precedent to be set by not making people put in their three names. But in saying that, these are great names and I understand the meaning and I'm happy to second it. But I don't want to set a precedent for the future that everybody starts just putting in one name.
Mr. Hydes?
Through the chair, just that's noted. I'll put that to new applicants that we get in the future, that the council would like to see those three choices. So, yeah.
Thank you. So we have a mover in Councillor Brahm, seconder Councillor Rawlinson. Any debate? Councillor Falloon?
Yeah, thank you. Certainly support it, because Arrowsmith looks down over Methven, so to me it's well named. You always learn something when you come to a council meeting. I never knew Burbank was a type of spud, but because it's associated with Alan and Elmer Lockhead, I think it's very fitting.
Thank you. If there's no more debate, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, no, carried. Thank you very much. And we have another naming of roads at Lakewood Aquatic Park on page 17. Any questions for Mr. Hydes? Would someone like to move? Councillor Wilson?
I'll move.
And Councillor Lovett, seconded.
I'll second.
Any debate? Again, I think that's probably a fitting name. Councillor Falloon.
Yeah, I certainly agree with it. The work that Graham Kennedy has done with Lakewood has been absolutely amazing. He's been a tremendous asset to that area down there, and I think it's absolutely fitting that something is named after him.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, no, carried. Right, our next item, page 22, appointment of recovery manager. We'll welcome Jane. Up, and we've all read the report. Any questions for Jane? Once she finds her glasses. Councillor Mackay.
Can I move the recommendation, please, Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor?
You may. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brahm? Any debate? No. Councillor Mackay? Do you want to speak to? No.
On no debate, most appropriate person.
Excellent. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, no, carried. Got it easy today, haven't I? Our next item was the Regional Climate Change Engagement Campaign, but we are due to have our two presenters come in at 1:45. So we will move on to item number 10, which is the Transwaste Canterbury Limited dividends on page 43. And we've got Mr. Brake to speak on this. So we've got the report there. Any questions for Mr. Brake? Or anything you'd like to add? No? If not, we've got a recommendation there that we receive this report. Councillor Lovett, would you like to move that?
I shall move that, thank you.
And Councillor Falloon, you'd like to second? Any debate on this? No. Put the motion, all in favour say aye. Aye. Against no, carried. Item number 11 is the Ashburton Water Zone Committee Progress Report, and we have got Bill Thomas coming in at 2:30, I think, to speak to us. So, shall we move on to item number 12, which is on page 49, and that is the Rangitata Awa Restoration Group. Just catch up here just a minute. And Hamish, you'll speak.
I'll just very briefly,
Yes,
Madam Chair, this is the report that was asked for by Council in relation to a question raised about this group. So I think the report is relatively self-explanatory, but happy to respond to any questions councillors may have.
Thank you. Councillor Lovett.
I was just reading the report and looking at all the people that are represented on it. There's actually no run holders or to defend like the farming community that farm all alongside this river. It's like everybody else is making decisions, but the people that actually live beside it and farm, there's nothing. Who's representing that lot on the community? Yeah.
The background to the work was essentially from Arawhenua and their concerns about the health of or the state of the river, and in particular the south side and the flooding that occurred in 2019. And the background as to how the groups were selected, I don't personally have that knowledge, although Ian Hyde was going to, he said, hopefully looking at Jane, Ian Hyde was going to stay for this item, but he may not have expected us to get there quite so quickly.
Nice.
Yeah. So he can give some background as to perhaps the formation of it. In the end, this group had been formed without the Ashburton District Council being included. And then I think it occurred to them there was another council on the other side of the river and invited us to join, and that's when I agreed to go on the governance group at that point. So the steering group as it's now called. So the formation of it is not known to me. Ian may have that knowledge when he gets back into the chamber. Here he is.
Here he is now.
Sorry.
We'll get you in the hot seat straight away. Thank you, Ian. So we've just started on discussion on the Rangitata Awa Restoration Project, and just maybe an update from you of how the groups were formed.
Yeah, it was in response to, Madam Chair, it was in response to a question from Councillor Lovett as to why there's no run holders included on the working group or the governance group. I didn't know the answer to that, sorry.
No, through the chair, I'm not entirely clear. My understanding is it's primarily an agency body at this point, being the TAs, the regional council, DOC, I think Lynn's, and the Runanga as involvement. So further than that, I don't think there's involvement at this point from other parties.
Will there be in the future, or that hasn't been
Sorry, I
discussed
can't, yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
yet? Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor. 3 questions. Can I thank the author of the report for a good report, if I can? Secondly, why did I have to read about such an important matter in the Christchurch Press, I think it was, and provide press cuttings to get the answers that this report produces? And the third question carries on from that.
Would you like to answer that?
If you want explanation of why I'm asking that question, I'm quite happy to do that, but I've got to be precise in asking the question. I can carry on if you like. To me, this is quite an important matter, and I thought it should have been reported to us that we had signed up to such a good project. So I'm asking, why did I have to read about it in the newspaper to find out?
Yeah, I guess the answer is, in thinking of this matter, because of the participants, because it had already been established that it was simply an operational matter that we were dealing with, and there are, I imagine, all sorts of working groups and collaborations and joint work that does not necessarily always have the visibility of elected members. If this one is of that sort of importance, I can just apologise for not bringing it to your attention. But I mean, we're forever talking with our neighbouring councils about issues that we jointly face. We're forever working collaboratively across the local government sector. In this particular instance, we simply hadn't advised you, and if that's a miss, then I apologise.
Third question, Councillor Mackay.
Third question, what assurances can we have that any matters for decision making that come out of this austere body will be reported to us? And if so, what decisions may we have to make in the future?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think there's 2 ways to answer that. We can give Council comfort by including minutes of their meeting, of the both groups' meetings, for your information. That would be one way of keeping you up to date. Secondly, if there's any work from this group, and I guess the rubber really hits the road around requiring money, requiring some budget resource, which we don't have committed to this project, then the only option for us is to bring that back to Council for decision. So if there is work and we're being asked to contribute, that will be a Council decision, because this work has no budget in our current annual plan. So there's 2 ways: one, an information one, and any precipitous request for action that involves budget, we will bring back to you, because we don't have it.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I see on the working group, Central South Island Fish and Game are there, Linns are there. Owing to the vital importance the Rangitata River is to this county, I hope no decisions are made that doesn't include extractors perhaps.
What you can see in the detail, that one of the aims of this group is to aim towards a cap on abstraction by 2025, but that cap is not defined in terms of the level of it. So there's all sorts of natural restrictions via the consenting process, via the manner in which abstractions are currently taken. The only issue of potential concern here was if this group felt that the abstraction cap should be less than is being taken for current users. So that would be, again, a matter of some importance that we would bring back here. But simply aiming for an abstraction cap per se doesn't cause us any great concern, because there are natural caps on abstraction already via the consenting process.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sure it came to Council before, because I remember it, that it was mentioned in a meeting. I'm sure it was.
Look, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I don't recall
No, I
either
don't
way.
either.
I know that at the last, relatively recently, we were asked to give a background and a report on it, and hence this report is here. Whether we had previously done it, I don't recall that.
Councillor Falloon?
Yeah, I find these talky committees with no actions actually defined and that sort of thing a complete waste of time. But if there is no cost as far as the ADC is concerned, apart from the CEO's important time to attend meetings, I cannot vote against it, quite frankly.
So would you like to move the motion?
I would move.
Councillor Falloon moves. Councillor Brahm, do you second?
I will second that.
Okay. Any debate on this? Councillor Mackay?
Madam Chair, first up, I declare that I'm going to vote in favour. But I was bitterly disappointed that we as elected officials or elected councillors were not informed on such an important matter. For example, one of the most unimportant matters to most people in Ashburton is the Ashburton River. But to some of us who know what can happen there, it is a very important matter. So I guess there's degrees of importance when making decisions. To me, a chief executive's report would have covered such a thing, but there's a wish for that not to happen. So I was left with no option but to ask for a special report at the time. And for it to be inferred that elected members are not interested about the lifeblood of the water in this district leaves me absolutely cold. But for governance, I'm going to vote in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? If not, Councillor Lovett.
I was just reading point number 9. The project's focus has been around farming, a collective identity there. Further down, I actually think there should be a farming interest in this because the farms all bounder onto this river, and whatever this group's going to do is going to affect all the landowners down it. And at the moment, you know, they do not have a voice on this committee, and I think it's imperative because so many of these committees, they start making decisions which affect the farming community, and there's nowhere there, you know, the farming community don't know what's going on. I think it's vital there's a voice for that fraternity in here.
Hamish, did you want to comment?
I guess the best way through that issue is if it's the will of council, so perhaps a separate resolution, that we take to that group our council's desire for landowners to be included, then we would certainly do that. As I say, we didn't establish the group. It wasn't we weren't the energy behind it. We simply acknowledged the invitation and said yes. So if we're to try and change the makeup of the group, we can but go and ask the balance of the group. But it would be good to see that was the will of council, Madam Chair, via a motion perhaps once this other one's been put.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I wouldn't go as far as moving an amendment to the motion. I would rely on the Chief Executive knowing the will of the Council so that if it's purely for Arawhenua and talking about the restoration of the Southern Branch or something, I've got no qualms about. But if it morphs into something bigger and starts talking about extraction or wanting extra funding, I would hope that the Chief Executive would come back to us and don't involve us in any more than is written here.
So you wouldn't want a copy of the minutes from these meetings? That was a question from the Mayor.
Yeah, we can make them available to those councillors that would like to see it.
Yeah.
Perhaps set out separately to the council meeting, just circulated when they come in.
That would be good. Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
I was going to basically say what Stuart has said. Essentially, it's about flood protection, isn't it? Essentially, the whole
I think that was the final catalyst for the group. But if you read the detail in here, then it's beyond that for sure. But there was certainly the catalyst was the southern branch on the south side, and that's where Timaru were far more involved than we were in the formation of the group.
So have you seen it morph beyond that then? Hamish?
No, it's interesting to me, the steering group, Ian might be able to talk about the working group, but the steering group has only met once, and it was on a time that I was unable to attend. So it isn't a group that I have a huge amount of active, direct knowledge of. And the steering group is only plans to meet twice a year. So it's keeping a bit of an overview of the working group, where Ian Hyde is our representative on the working group. So he may have further reflection on the work of the working group, but from the steering group's point of view, it hasn't been a particularly active part of my life yet.
Yeah, through the chair, I think
Yes.
I think the question is, oh sorry, not the question, just to follow on from what Hamish has said. The original, as I think to use your words, the catalyst for this project was the flooding that occurred in 2019. At which point, I think, as I understand it, the restoration works initially are proposed a complete refurbishment and perhaps even improvement of those protection works. At which point, I believe parties got together and said, "Well, actually, is this the right thing that should happen? And should we be looking at how this river is managed in the future?" And that process went on until late last year, when I think the view had been widened out to the entire Rangitata River, and then somebody had thought, well, actually, Ashburton District has got an interest in this because they are obviously a party to this as well. Hence, as Hamish said, that we didn't start this; we were invited subsequently. The working group at the moment is still, I think, identifying what its role is as well, and to try and see where this sits and how it goes through. I've only been to two, we've only been invited to, and I've only been to two of these meetings as well. One was a meeting, and the most recent one was a workshop to identify the visions, which I think follows through into the report. So it is still at very, very early stages as well. So that's sort of where I see it.
Thank you. If there's no further debate, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, no. Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ian, for coming back. We'll go back to item number 9, which is the Regional Climate Change Engagement Campaign. And welcome Dr. Fiona Shanhan and Teflin Bradlin James from Environment Canterbury up to. So thank you for coming along. We'll just get set up. So this is on page 25. You'll see the recommendation, etc., and the reports on Stella as well.
Through you, Madam Chair and councillors, just wanted to set it up for you. On item 9 today, we're looking at a regional climate change engagement campaign that we're being asked to participate in. And so we thought it'd be wise for ECAN representatives to come and present to you the contents of that campaign for your consideration.
Thank you very much. And I think Councillor Cameron and I saw this a presentation similar at ECAN when we went to the Climate Change Councillors Workshop. So we appreciate you coming along. And the floor is yours, and we'll leave questions to the end if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your time today, because I realise that you're busy, you've got a full agenda, but it was great to have the opportunity to come along and just present a little bit of this, and I apologise to the two of you, it probably is exactly the same presentation that you've already seen. So, I know you've got a paper on it, but just a little bit of a recap of how Environment Canterbury got to this point. In our annual plan for the current year, so in some ways it was a bit of a last minute thought that we needed to put some money in for climate change engagement because the conversation needed to start. And at that stage we didn't know what that engagement was going to look like. And so a lot of background work was then done about what exactly will we be communicating, what engagement is needed. As luck would have it, the Mayoral Forum was running in parallel with us and coming up with exactly the same idea. So At that point, we joined forces, and so it became one and the same campaign. We want to just talk you through a little bit of the science behind it, and then some of the campaign elements, so you can actually see what it might look like and what we hope to achieve with it. But also just to reinforce up front from me that this is not an Environment Canterbury campaign. It wouldn't be an Ashburton District Council campaign either. It's a community campaign, and that's quite important, that it isn't. It's not us. It didn't make any sense for us to be having the conversation. We knew it needed to go local. We know we need to work with partners. So the plan was to work with the territorial authorities and the 10 Papatikūrunga and use information that you've got and that we've got to create something that the community could engage with, rather than that was solely about us putting things out, but more two-way. So without anything else from me, I'm going to hand over to Fiona Shannon to just talk you through some of the science.
Oh, kia ora koutou, and thank you very much, Taflin, for the introduction, and thank you all for having us here this afternoon. I'm going to start with the easy part. Climate change is a very challenging topic, but this is something that you already know. Our planet is warming up. Since 1909, the national average temperature in New Zealand has risen by about 1.1 degrees, and over that same period, sea levels around Aotearoa have risen by around 21 centimetres. So those changes might not sound like a lot, but they're already affecting where we live, how we live. They're affecting culturally significant sites and practices, they're affecting taonga species, and they're of course affecting our economy. And if we look ahead, this graph here shows global greenhouse gas emissions over time. And I'd love to run around with a pointer, but if you can just follow me on the screen. If you follow the big grey bar, if we were to carry on with the business as usual kind of scenario, there's obviously a lot of uncertainty associated with what that might look like in terms of global warming. But we can expect, under those sorts of trajectories, warming of more than 4 degrees by the end of the century. If you jump further down to the little skinny blue bar, that sees global greenhouse gas emissions taper off and start to decrease towards the end of the century. Under that kind of scenario, we're still expecting up close to 3 degrees of warming by the end of the century. And so if you drop right down to the little dotted green line, the very bottom of the curve, you can see that if we're really going to make a difference and meet our commitment to the Paris Agreement, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees or less by the end of the century, we need to make immediate and drastic cuts to our greenhouse gas emissions. So for me, these sorts of numbers are scary, but I have hope, and that is because we're not powerless in all of this. We all have the opportunity to choose through our actions on a day-to-day basis the future of what our region, our country, our planet will look like. So for us in Canterbury as a region, we're really delighted to be able to share the work that we've done towards this campaign with you. And we see it as a great way of partnering with territorial authorities across the district to really connect with local communities and enhance their understanding of climate change impacts and opportunities. And so I'll just finish here with a short whakatauki, one you might have come across before. Ko te kaia te rangatira he kōrero. And that really talks about the food of the chiefs being discussion. And I think it's through the richness of conversations that we can have in a campaign like this that really helps build people's understanding and hopefully their level of comfort with what is a really difficult topic, and helps to prepare them for what we know is coming. So I'll pass over to Taflin to show you more about the work so far.
Thanks, Fiona. So when we started to look at this, exactly as Fiona said, we started to think it needs to be a conversation first. And so people were using the expression in our working groups when we were looking at it, it's basically, it's just time. It's time to start talking. And so this is how we started to develop the campaign. But we did go to a number of external parties. We've worked with Massey University. Fortunately for us, they happen to have a climate change communications expert, and so we've joined in with that Massey class. And so their second year students are actually helping us develop the campaign. And we got a lot of useful information from the research that they've been doing around the world, and how people are having these conversations elsewhere, and how to hit that right tone between enough fear, enough urgency, if you like, that's required, but also hope, and also what people can do about it. So it's been an incredibly useful collaboration with them. We also talked to the health board, and we've been talking to now a number of territorial authorities. It's been back to the Mayoral Forum's group. And we've also talked to some, well, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council in particular, and Naitahu about what they've been doing themselves. I'm going to try and show you the video if I can make it work. I just want to give you some of the campaign elements to give you a sense of what the campaign might look like. It does normally have sound. Yeah, we did have this when we spoke to Selwyn District Council as well, the sound didn't work. But this just gives you an idea of the simplicity of what we're saying. We don't want to frighten people with science and scientific terms. We want to keep it something that's really simple that people can engage with. And so here, these are some of the ideas that we've got around where we could perhaps use some of the elements of the campaign to get people's attention when they're out in the environment and when they're in the right place to hear the right message. So, for example, the coastal erosion message when people are out walking along the beach. We want to also be able to use really simple messages, and so this "It's Time" can be used in a number of ways. So although "It's Time Canterbury" is the overall brand, it might be "It's Time Ashburton" to talk about, you know, when you've got some information going out. So we want it to be able to be used locally as well as across the region. We are also talking to MFE next week to see how it might fit into a national conversation around climate change. So these are just some other examples that we've mocked up. This is not necessarily how we're going to use it, but it's just to give you an idea. And then this one also, again, where people are. So "It's time we thanked you for using the bus." These sort of placements give us a little bit of space to put some more information about why that might be important, so hence the top of this. But also then hopefully catching the people who are driving past in their car and not taking the bus and realising some of the messaging and around what they could potentially be doing. And then this is another example of where we could perhaps use street posters and share a little bit more information. I'll just give you a moment there, but I think you might have this one in your paper, so you might have had the chance to read this one already. So. And there will be a website for the campaign. So the point of the website is to share the information in a way that is easy for people to understand, but it's also a call to action, and it's the first call to action. It's be part of the conversation. And what we want people to do is actually sign up on the website, sharing their details where they are living locally, so that when you've got something to say, you can use that information to target people who are already wanting to be part of the conversation and have a foundation of information already coming off the website. So this is where we're hoping that it would be, in some ways, a positive affirmation that other people are getting involved, other people are part of the conversation. So it would collect information, but also track the campaign reach. So people will be able to say, well, okay, I mean, because we realise that for some people, being the first to move on something like this is perhaps a little bit daunting, whereas actually if you're starting to see a number of signatures clocking up and you're starting to see organisations signing up as well, then you might be more inclined to come in behind and actually join the conversation as well. It also means that if we're adding more content or putting things out, we can deliberately target people. So this is an example of the page for each district. So you'll see on the map on the left-hand side, we've got the region, and then it'll just show which district you're actually looking at. So this is Christchurch's information. So Christchurch City Council has provided the content, and we've just put it into the tone of the campaign. So when you go through this concertina, you can drop down the boxes, and then that's pulling straight through from Christchurch City Council and the work that they're doing and what they want to say locally. The Ashburton page, as you can see, hasn't got anything on it at the moment, pending that we hope that you'll have some questions for us and some information that we'll be able to use afterwards. But we have been working with Ruben and other members of your team just to see what sort of things you might be able to put in before we came along to present. But obviously it depends on how you're feeling about the campaign today. So it was really important when we were developing the campaign that it was local and it was relevant to people. We want it to trigger questions, and then we'd be able to answer those questions. So that's another part of the website, so people will actually be able to raise a question then. Well, that's great that you've said that we'll have more droughts, but what does that mean for us? Can you tell us what that means for the Mackenzie? Can you tell us what it means for Ashburton, for example? So phase 1, we hope to launch at the end of May. There is a Merrill Forum meeting, and the 10 Papatipu Runanga chairs will also be in Clearwater on the same day. So we're taking advantage of having everybody there, and we want to be able to do a launch of the campaign at that point. That will be phase 1. So there's a lot of information still that we're gathering. Fiona has spent a great deal of time going through a lot of science reports to put the information in a way that's actually easier to understand and doesn't, as we say, scare with too much science. But there's opportunity with the campaign then to move on to a second phase, which will enable us to use elements like this. So we'll be able to have cards at public places and find out what people are wanting to do themselves, what action can they take, and we will have leaders on the website taking people to where they can find out more. But also then going into schools and going into pop-ups and getting people just starting to talk about what they might be going to do, and then what action we can take as a wider community. The one bit that I haven't talked a lot about that I mentioned at the beginning is the collaboration with the Runanga as well, which we have started those conversations through Environment Canterbury's fora, but we'd be very interested in working with the councils as well if you have got avenues to find out what is going on locally for your Runanga and how they might like to contribute. We've heard some fantastic stories of what they're seeing already that isn't in science speak. It's in what are they seeing in the waterways, what are they seeing around plantings and seeds and things like that, and what they're doing in the new climate. So I think that's probably enough from us. We're very happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Got any questions? Councillor Brown.
Yes, you do. Thank you, ladies. I quite like it, no trouble whatsoever. But you say, we would like to get questions. Who's going to answer those questions?
Initially, the questions would be coming back to us, so we would be managing the site, but
yeah, okay,
yep. And then it would depend what the question was. So if it was something that was very local and specific to something that was happening in your area, for example, then the question would come back to Ashburton District Council to answer. If it was more a general science question where we could pull that information ourselves, then we would answer the question ourselves. Yeah.
Your second slide or PowerPoint, could you just go back to that one?
Tell me when.
Yeah, keep going. Keep going.
Was it Fiona's?
Keep going. Keep going.
Keep going.
That's the one.
This one.
Right. You started on the top. You went to the pledges and targets, and under there is also another one that says optimistic net zero targets. How do we get there? Or are we just optimistic?
That's a very good question. Yes, I guess with optimism we need action as well, and I think that this is a global climate action tracker, and so it's reliant on the best information available at any one time. So when any country publicly releases its climate change action plan, that's where information is fed from. So over time, I would hope that we could move from more of an optimistic target to a how are we tracking, but that really does rely on individual countries' commitments. Yeah.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Could you go back one more slide, please?
That one.
Why do you show graphs like that with dramatically misrepresentation? Why do you not put the average temperature on Canterbury or New Zealand and actually show how much temperature has actually increased over the years? That's a complete misrepresentation to what's actually happening, isn't it? You can do anything with graphs. That shows from 0 to 1. What's our average temperature in Canterbury? 15? So, I mean, why do you show graphs like that and not give people a true, accurate representation of what's actually happening?
So I guess this is a true representation of what is happening. I've chosen in this example a different measure. This is looking at global temperatures and how they differ from the average temperature around the world between 1901 and the year 2000. So absolutely, we could prepare a New Zealand-based equivalent. The data that we have from climate records in New Zealand shows that since 1909, New Zealand's national average temperature has increased by at least 1.1 degrees. So the 0 to 1 on the scale here is not too different from our own experience.
No, what I'm saying is the average temperature should be, say, 15 degrees in New Zealand. It's gone up 1.5 degree. That's a completely different graph to the way you show it here, isn't it? Why do you climate change enthusiasts graphs up like that don't actually show the true picture? It's gone from 15 to 16.5 or whatever the base is. And then we'd all see that it is actually climbing rather than try and frighten people. If you carry that, it's going to be 100 degrees in 10 years sort of thing, if you followed a graph like that. To me, it's a misrepresentation to what's actually happening.
Oh, thank you. That's a real opportunity for us in presentation, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for being willing to answer questions. That brought me to the microphone. A number of years ago, so I'm trying to work out why I should vote in favour of this, because I'm a great believer in having consultation. I'm a great believer in talking the issues through and everything. So you're from ECAN, right? So why should I vote for this if ECAN's the lead agency? And I've got a number of questions for you. The first one is closing down the Canterbury Regional Management, closing down the Canterbury Water Management Strategy. So it's only an advisor to the council, not a talk fest to Canterbury. Why did you do that?
Is it related to this
Yes.
slideshow?
The next one is, because it's got 1901 on there, it gives me a bit of a licence. This district has worked very, very hard to make sure that when the temperatures change and the east coast becomes drier, we can produce the crops that are required, okay? And ECAN is doing its best at the moment to close that down quite a bit by putting regulations through plans and that in place. When we asked ECAN to come to a meeting re the coastal settlement down at Hackatree to help us through the issues of whether we should protect the houses that we were eventually cut away, ECAN sidestepped and chucked the national policy statement at us. They made a very good presentation, but that's what they did. So coastal erosion, rising temperatures I've covered, and it just adds up on top of each other why I should allow the Ashburton District Council logo to go on something that we have tried over the years to bring about a collaborative approach and protect ourselves in the future. Even with stock banks, the Ashburton people, town people, have paid a big high price for brand new stock banks a few years ago to protect them, and for this scenario that you talk about coming. So really, really, after doing all that and being kicked around a bit, why should we? Why should we? I hope you can answer my questions.
I'm not sure I can answer your questions in a level of detail around the background of all of those, but I'm genuinely sorry that you feel that way. It's certainly not the intention that.
Sorry,
But
it's
I'm
not me, it's the people of Ashburton.
But yes, I mean, and I hear you. Thank you, because I didn't realise that. In terms of the campaign, if I can start with that one, although, if you like, the lead agency it's our money, but we don't want this to be a lead agency as in we're controlling all the content. I mean, that's why we're here. because it's actually about the community. So we want them to get the local content from you, not from us. So, I mean, we could have gone out with our money and just done a campaign that was ECAN branded. It wouldn't have worked. It needs to be local. People need to see that it's local and it's relevant. And so it's got to come through local agencies. And so we need you. I'll be absolutely honest. We really want you to be part of this. And we don't want to be a lead agency as in controlling the messaging. So I just want to give you that reassurance around the campaign. But in terms of some of the other issues, I'd be very happy to catch up with you offline and actually try and answer some of those questions. I don't know enough about the background of all of them, I'm sorry, but I'm genuinely sorry that you feel that way and that is the impression or the actual that you've had in the past from us.
Thank you. Councillor Falloon, you've got a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your graph up there, as Stuart says, is quite dramatic, but it's not really. If you talk to a geologist, they will go back to the beginning of time and say the Earth has always been through warming and cooling periods. And I can remember as a kid on the farm, our cliffs on the farm used to be full of seashells, and we were miles from the sea. However, that's the past. What we're facing at the moment is a world that's overpopulated. In the past, we used to have natural diseases and natural disasters that used to control the world's population. For every extra person we now have on Earth, that is more carbon dioxide being released into the atmosphere. It's not really a matter of how many cars we're driving and that sort of thing. I mean, the oil companies take shit. But it's basic is we have got too many people driving too many cars.
Is this a question, Councillor Falloon?
Yeah, no, I'm just coming to the end.
Good eye.
You're on background information, mate.
Yeah, I am. So my question comes down, so I actually support the recommendation, believe it or not. But my question comes down to is, on page 28, under risks of option 1, we've got...
We're not on to the recommendation yet, we're just...
It's a question.
Yes.
The scientific data and research underpinning the campaign is not robust.
No, okay. So, Councillor Falloon, you're looking at the recommendation that the report was written, which has not been done. So we're taking the slideshow and the presentation, we're taking questions on that, and then we will get to the report and the recommendation.
Okay.
So are you happy to just hold fire a wee bit?
Yep.
And we will go to Councillor Cameron.
I totally support the initiative and would like to move the recommendation.
Yeah, so we will, we'll just complete the presentation first. So is there anything else that you would like to add to your presentation? Thank you very much for coming along. I believe you've been to other councils as well to present this.
We have been, yes, we've been to Selwyn, Waimakariri, I think. We've got City Council next week. Yep.
Right, thank you. And this has come from the Canterbury Mayoral Forum as well. Yep.
That's right. Look, this may or may not be appropriate, but if it helps, I could provide some comment on the risk that has been put out in your council paper.
Yes.
Is that helpful?
Yep, that would be great. Thank you.
So I haven't seen this paper until today. The way I read the risk under option 1 written on page 28 is that that's a risk that may have been identified by your team. So the risk identified is that the data may not be robust. And then there's some information that follows that talks about where that information has come from. So based on the information here, it's the same information that you've used for your climate change policy. There are a number of reports that information comes from. Primarily, it's based on projections done by NIWA. And there is other information that comes from the Ministry for the Environment. So personally, and this is my personal view, that the data used are robust, and as part of the campaign we would consult with your team to make sure that you're comfortable with whatever information is put out about Ashburton District. So hope that helps.
Thank you. And I'd just like to ask, looking at the campaign, and a lot of it, some of it won't be relevant to this district, like we don't have any, we don't have a public transport, we have very few sort of buildings along the coast, etc. So there would be different advertising that would be really relevant to our district, and I think that's great. I mean, it's very eye-catching and looks really good. You have a comment, Hamish?
Yes, perhaps I can, Madam Chair. When this council was one of the very first councils to adopt its own climate change policy in 2019, some of the debate here and some of the, implications or nuances and behind that debate were expressed at that time as well. But the will of the council was to adopt its own policy because it felt that some of the national messaging or some of the headline-grabbing reporting did not suit the subject particularly well. So we developed our own policy. Now, our own policy talks about our community being prepared and resilient, and the opportunity to talk to our community about being prepared and being resilient is one that our own policy contemplates and we need to take in some fashion. And then because of the work through the Merrill Forum, which I was more familiar with than ECAN's own work, and the risk assessment that was developed, which you've all had, then the opportunity to be included in this campaign is the link to our own policy and our own desire to have our own community prepared. The issue, the real reason that we wanted to bring it to the council was whether or not, in reality, the campaign itself was one which you were comfortable having the council logo on. It wasn't, in our mind anyway, so much that we were having a fundamental debate about the issues that we've already adopted in our own policy. It was far more to say, is this particular campaign one that meets the needs in our own policy? Because if it does, and if you're comfortable to associate with it, then we've kind of achieved a piece of work in a quite efficient way, I might think, because of the good work of others, that gives effect to the very thing that we said we would do anyway. If it doesn't, if the creative execution of the material doesn't resonate, or the councillor doesn't feel comfortable having our logo on, then there's a choice you can make there, but it will simply drive us back to doing our own work to give effect to our own policy, which this might be a really convenient and effective way to give effect to that policy. So that was the real reason for being here. If there were things in the creative that jarred or felt that we would be really uncomfortable communicating in this particular way with our community, then that would be a reason perhaps to consider doing our own thing. It wasn't so much brought here for a fundamental examination of the whole subject matter. That debate was had by council back in 2019 and the policy put in place. So that was sort of the purpose of this, was to hear about the campaign as opposed to the more fundamental debate, which council may wish to have and may wish to have on a number of occasions in the future, but would ordinarily arise from our own desire to do that, as opposed to do we join with this creative campaign. So just a couple of comments there.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, do you have a question?
No, I'm just seconded.
Okay, so I'll thank you both very much for your presentation, and invite you to if you want to, stay in the public gallery while we move through the recommendation. So thank you very much. So now we will move to item number 9, which is on page 25, and we have a recommendation which Councillor Cameron moved. I would like to put your light on, please.
Sorry. I would like to move the recommendation that Council agrees to participate as a partner in the Regional Climate Change Campaign led by Environment Canterbury, and that we approve the use, if we're happy to do it in one part, of the Ashburton District Council logo on the campaign website and social media channels.
And Councillor Brown, second that.
Should I talk to that now, or can I talk to that later?
Yes, you can do. If I sort of jumped the gun, if there's any other questions for Tony, we can work on those. Yes, please speak to that.
I think it's a clever, simple, adaptable campaign. I think it's attractive, it's easy to understand. I think regardless of your view on whether man has caused climate change or climate change is a natural occurring event, climate change is happening and the world is warming up, and we have to deal with the sequelae of that, and we have to deal with what comes as a result of that. Farmers are initiating practices in terms of changing of crops or whatever they need to do to manage that, and we are preventing open fires and all the rest of it in our own towns to manage and try and reduce our carbon emissions and impact on our climate change. So I totally support the campaign. I think it's a wonderful initiative, and I think we can't pretend to any other option, really, myself.
Thank you. Any other debate? Councillor Mackay.
Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor, Councillors, I come along today to vote in favour of this, and I'm going to vote against it on what I've heard. I was willing to give the benefit of the doubt because the presenters might not know the history as after they crossed the Rekai River Bridge. The Chief Executive confirmed beyond all reasonable doubt that I shouldn't vote in favour of this, because I look at the goals of the policy to strive to understand climate change and what it means for the Ashburton District now and in the future, and create opportunities to share the knowledge with the wider community. I don't think Christchurch understands this district on what I've heard today, and that's the one thing that really grates me. Everything we do to prevent climate change, not to prevent climate change, to guard against it, stop banks, irrigation techniques, coastal stuff at Hackatree, all that, and they don't seem to know. So it's really disappointing. And all the people that have put a lot of voluntary effort into all that, I feel that if I voted for this campaign, I would be slapping them in the face. Whereas I actually want to congratulate them for being light years ahead of other people in protection of our communities. They've done a wonderful job, all clubbing together. Most of it's been done voluntary. The bit that has required money has been a great investment at personal cost to them. This presentation I saw does not really tell Ashburton as I see it, and the people that I believe I represent who want jobs, and they want to live in a safe community and not be flooded, but have opportunity of the job range. That's why I vote against this. I've always believed in collaboration. Go back in history, you'll find that I was the founder at the ECAN Council table of the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, and everything that is good about it. And it has worked. It has done a great job. But this, to do that, one had to understand Canterbury and the lifebloods of Canterbury and the protection required. This, what I saw, doesn't do that.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? No, I'll put the motion in favour. All those in favour say aye. Against? Do you want that recorded?
Please.
Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Tony. We will now move, if you're ready, Bill, to the Ashburton Water Zone Committee Progress Report. Thank you, ladies, for coming down to see us. Welcome, Bill. We've received your report. Everyone should have the 2020 Progress Report on page 46 of your agenda. I'll just get to it. And Bill, I'll just get you to turn your microphone on. Yep, good eye.
Right.
And if you'd just like to speak to your report, please.
Okay, well, thank you, Maris and Council. And CEO Hamish, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present our report. Can I take it as read?
Yes.
Great, so we won't have to trawl through it. What I thought, I'd do a few highlights and then just talk a bit about what's going on in the future, which is probably more interesting. But first, we just probably have to acknowledge the retirement of two fairly key people. One was Carl Russell, who represented the Runanga, and in the Zone Committee, it's possibly with your council as well, there's a lot of things that have to go through the iwi and the Runanga, and we have difficulty in the Zone Committee getting good people from that part of the community, and they've got the final say on everything. They just default back to the treaty, and if they don't participate in the discussion, it's pretty difficult. And we had an incident just recently where some minutes got changed, which I wasn't too happy about, but I presented a report to ECAN last week and made them aware of it, so hopefully they're thin on the ground, the Runanga, but we need them. So hopefully we can get some people there. So Carl was a good one, so just to acknowledge him, and John Wall from Fish and Game, who had a wealth of experience, so they'll be missed. The key achievements, which are just those 4 paragraphs in front of you, really the Zone Committee going through the Ashburton River consent. It's an interesting, because they tell us it's all going very well, but I've got a feeling it's not. And there'll be a few issues there with quite a few people that are quite disfranchised, and they're getting a bit upset about it. But we've got to get this water back to get the Ashburton River up to the 6 QMAX. So that's just one of the things that we'll have to work through. Really, that's sort of ECAN's issue. They managed the aquifer recharge, which we appreciate all the support we get from you as a council on that, and it's a bit of an issue now with the new rate increases, and it's now going to be a targeted rate. Whether you think that's correct or not, I'm not too sure, but that's a sort of another issue, and it comes up in submissions. There's a few local projects like the Carter's Creek that we're doing, and the Hapuka at the Wakajui River mouth, and the Ashburton Lakes. So they're all just working away quite quietly. We try whenever we can to work in with Councillor Lovett's biodiversity group, and so there's not a double up, and we share the resources because it's time's precious and resources precious, so we try and keep it simple. There's a refresh process underway that started now the 12th of April and closes on the 10th of May, because we've got 2 vacancies and we really could do with a third. We are trying to spread the net as wide as we can to get as much diversification in the committee as we can, and we have shoulder tapped a couple of people in the community, so hopefully they'll put their names forward and can contribute. The action plan, it's all based really on the shared priorities that come from this ADC Council and ECAN, and they're sort of in line with each other, so we've got a clear target of what we have to do, so that's good. Just going forward, the main ones are the Hinds River and the community group. Catchment groups, there's a bit of a swell for local catchment groups to be set up. I think as long as they're don't try and set up another hierarchy above it. It's good to get individuals involved, but you don't want to set up more and more organisations. Try and keep it simple. Carter's Creek, it's a biggie because we're sort of fairly well through it, and then they talk about stormwater and all these issues, which we're not that experienced on, but I know they're talking to Andrew Dazzle and people within ADC about that. I'd like to acknowledge the support we get from ADC. There's 2 councillors on the committee, and you supply the secretarial, which is Carol McAtavity, who does a great job, and she's very efficient, so I thank the council for that. So that's just really a brief summary of what we're doing. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them if I can.
Thank you. Councillor Falloon.
Yeah, just on your last bullet point under key achievements there, you've got monitoring shows that groundwater influenced by the pilot site remains low in nitrate and oxygen concentrations. I would have thought that was a very good achievement, and yet farmers are getting beaten around both sides of the head with cricket bats over the use of nitrogen. Why?
You've hit the nail on the head, Councillor Falloon. I mean, the science, and if you stick to the facts, farming is using a lot less nitrogen than we used 10 years ago, and that's been proved. And I just see in the Mayfield Heinz Valletta, they test over 100 hectares, an area that covers 100 hectares now, and I think there's 42 wells in it. And the last one on the coast is down to 2.7 parts per million, which is below the new water standards coming in. Yet if you read some, I suppose I'll use the word, radical groups in the newspaper, go straight to headlines and say that, that we're killing the planet, and we're aware things have to be done, and we are doing it. So you make a very good point, but it's very hard to get that message out to the general public. They love printing all the negative stuff, but no one wants to hear the good stuff that's going on. So that's probably what we need to try and do. Yeah. Luckily we've got a nice media over here. Haven't we?
I think they heard that, thank you. Any other questions for Bill? Councillor Mackay.
Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor, Bill, hopefully you'll accept this question. Can I congratulate you on what you've done, especially out in the Heinz Plains, where the people of that area have taken it upon themselves to do something about a problem that they have found in their water through managed aquifer recharge, and the community itself was willing to accept a separate rate, similar to a river rating district, for their actions. On a personal note, because I know you can't comment as chair of the liaison committee unless it's an actual decision, do you think that there should be some regional rate in that as public good for the Canterbury region, in that separate rate?
Absolutely. Well, I think if you look at Tynwald as an area here, in the urban community of Tynwald, there's quite high nitrates in their water, and they will benefit from MAR, and yet their rates won't be affected, so they in fact won't be paying for any benefit. And for the whole country, if Heinz can get if the Heinz District Plains can get its nitrate level down to a suitable level, which will be within the new government regulations, that'll be very positive for the whole community. So I would have liked to have seen a more general rate, which might have only been $1 or so per head, rather than, well, I suppose I'm a bit biased, but it's a personal view, rather than hitting a certain community. It seems the farmers are getting hit for everything, when everyone's going to benefit in the end, and we don't mind paying rates to help town roading and bridges and everything because we use them. I think the community could pay a wee bit there, but there are quite a few submissions gone to ECAN, and I see they've put another couple of days in the submission process, so they must be getting quite a few. Hopefully they're the right ones. But yeah, but I agree. Yeah, I think it should be more a general rate, or part of it should be. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for Bill? No, anything you'd like to add?
No,
All
thank
good?
you. Just thank you for your time.
Fabulous, thank you. So I just need someone to move and second the report, please. So I have got Councillor Cameron to move the report,
yes,
and
please.
Councillor Rawlinson to second. All those in favour, aye. Against, no, carried. Thank you. And Bill, we've got afternoon tea probably in about 20 minutes if you'd like to stay. Yeah, can't help yourself to a cuppa. Thank you. Thank you. So we have got the Mayor's report next, which is on page 67. Councillor Mackay,
Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor, I'll move.
you'll move that
That
report.
we've received the Mayor's report.
Councillor Cameron second. All those in favour, aye. Against, no, carried. And we've also got a councillor report, and that's from Councillor Lynette Lover on the Canterbury Biodiversity Champions 2021. Councillor Lovett, do you want to speak to any of this?
Not really, but it was interesting this morning. Some of the RMA's forward program is kind of sitting within these pretty pictures we've got sitting here. But everything's all tying in and fitting in, and just one thing my last point there is we really kind of need overlapping maps of our district of ownership of all the land, whether it's LIMS or council or private. When we're doing projects, we kind of need to all work in together, and nobody seems to know who owns this or that, and there's abandoned land, and we kind of need to make progress in that respect before we can get moving too far.
I'll ask Jane to speak on that. Do we have such maps?
We do have some, but you couldn't put the whole lot on the one, I wouldn't have thought. But what some of the work the KT is doing is in developing this future development strategy and a spatial plan will have a lot of that sort of information on it. Yeah.
That's great, because they're actually looking at walkways and stuff up sides of creeks and rivers and things, and if we can get connectivity on walking and cycling tracks, it would be actually quite good for the good well-being of the public. Yeah.
Any questions on Councillor Lovett's report? If not, can I have a mover to receive the councillor reports?
I'm going to move my report.
So, Councillor Lovett, you move that,
report.
And Councillor Brahm, your second. Any debate? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, no, carried. Thank you. So our next item on the agenda before afternoon tea is to introduce our 3 new staff members. We might just adjourn or Hamish, do you want to?
Yes, we are reaching out to them now to see if they can come a few moments early. So once they get here, then we can move straight to that item.
Yep. So we'll just adjourn for a few minutes until the staff arrive. Thank you. There's a light go off. There's a thumbs up.
Back on.
Thank you. Welcome back after our little short adjournment, and welcome Sarah Mosley. We've got 3 new staff to introduce. If you'd like to do that for us, please.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Today I'd like to introduce 3 new people to the council team. We've got Sikanda Hirani. And he is our Planning Administration Officer for a fixed term period covering a period of parental leave, which is fantastic for our planning team. We've got Lucas De Souza, and he is our Monitoring and Enforcement Officer. So some people around the community will meet Lucas in due course. And we also have Ian Soper, and he is our Open Spaces Manager. So new to join the team, clearly, and really looking forward to his impact and the relationship that he has with the community and also council going forward. So those are the 3 new people, and if they can attend afternoon tea at the end, that'd be lovely to chat in person more.
Wonderful, thank you very much, and welcome to you all. We're going to break now for afternoon tea, so we welcome you to come through and have a cuppa and a bit of a catch up, and we will be back here at 3:15 p.m. Going into public excluded. Great, thank you.